Oh shit, I forgot to record on my side.
You don't have to.
Oh, we're going live. That's fine. Yes.
Yeah, no, you don't have to record your side of this. It's not, well, it will be a podcast, but YouTube will nicely record the whole thing for me. So really the big question is whether our audio levels are kind of appropriate. And of course, we're just waiting for some human being to acknowledge our existence. It's possible that Avi Scott and Flower just did. So did you see the eclipse last night?
I actually did not. That was the problem. We had really bad weather here, so I missed it. This is the big one. It's the blood moon too, and I missed it. I did
Yeah.
not.
That is the sort of cruel fate, the cruel irony of having a total lunar eclipse on in the wintertime.
No,
That
it's
huge swaths of North America anyway didn't get a chance to see it at all. I can't believe it. We had, like, I live in like the worst part of North America to see eclipse anything in the sky in the wintertime. It's just rainy and cloudy. But for some crazy reason, things just opened up perfectly and it was awesome.
I'm envious on that. Now, the solar eclipse are the ones I always feel really bad about missing because you get that. I mean, there is nothing quite like the way it is when you're actually in that total dark, that
Did
just the way everything seems to set around the edges and just seems the right kind of light but torn down.
did you see the solar eclipse? The one that
I think the last one that I had here was it last year or the year
yeah,
before?
2 years. The one that was like 2 years ago. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
went and got to see that one. And, I had a pretty decent view of it from my front porch actually, so it was nice.
So, hey everybody. Oh, right. There's people watching us have a conversation. I'm joined for the second time by my good friend and futurist, Isaac Arthur. Isaac, how's it going?
Pretty good. Glad to be on, Facial.
You are obviously just growing in leaps and bounds. And I think that last time that we talked, you have a much larger operation and organization now. The quality on your videos is just going up and up. And as a person who's in the business, I see and I know where all of the video clips come from, and there's a ton of stuff that's now happening in your episodes that you guys are making from scratch. So how many people have you got working with you now?
There are almost 100 people in the production group that sort of, a lot of them they make maybe one clip a month, or they work on the editing of the scripts, or they moderate things. But it's a huge group of people, and they come, they go, they sometimes they're busy, sometimes they're not. But
Yeah.
it's just, they make things so much better, you know. And it's so nice to get to work with them too, because you're working on these things. It's always nice to get feedback as you're going along, and that keeps you motivated and moving. So
It's a tough thing where you have people who volunteer to help out because they're really enjoying the content that you're creating, and to try and put all of that enthusiasm and skill into a final product. And so the fact that you say you've got 100 people, right? Like on our team, there's Chad, all hail Chad, who's my editor and he sort of handles a lot of the back end production. There's my wife who does a lot of the camera work, and me, and that's the team. And so you know we're kind of in this time where we're able to make the kind of content that I think people
yeah,
like
no,
us as children or as young people, we would have loved to have seen the kind of stuff that you're creating. And yet it's not the kind of thing that like the Cosmos would come, and the people behind Cosmos, one of the big production companies, come and try to fund. I mean, do you think this is the future?
I like to think that I mean, there are too many times, when we're doing the pop sci stuff where it's like a 5 minute discussion of stuff that we've had so much of, the short news articles that get to see by millions. That was always kind of the level that need to be at. But now, when we're doing longer episodes, and I was glad to see a lot of folks have adopted the longer, in-depth material, we're seeing that there's no way to ever exhaust that. You're never going to have too many people doing this kind of material in depth. Um, on all subjects or on any field, history, philosophy, any of those things. And this ability to kind of crowdsource and start small. One person part time can turn out quality videos now with a relatively small investment of time and energy and resources. Obviously, the more you put into it, the better the individual quality is. But the difference between the early work when it was strictly just me and now is big, but not so big
Right.
that it's not something you don't need we have 100 volunteers who spend a couple hours a week for the most part on it. You would need a production team like 100 to have done something like Cosmos back in the day with Sagan. I'm not even sure the credit all there is, but I'm sure that was mostly full-time folks. And we match that level of quality these days, but 30 years later, with much better technology, and that's still good. Those are still good to watch. Anybody can do those now for any topic.
But if you look at Cosmos, for example, what were there? 12 episodes, 45 minutes long, right? That's 1/4 of a year for you, right? 12 episodes, 45 minutes long, right? But you've been dependably putting out an episode a week since the dawn of time.
I think we started in, I started calling them seasons after a while to kind of keep some kind of sanity on what the order was. And there was early season 2. We switched over doing a weekly format, and we haven't missed one since. And the trick for that, of course, is to prepare them well in advance.
Yes.
We like the scripts for like Mulch today, and then we just had to do the video for that. So
prior planning prevents poor performance.
Yeah, and it helps out a lot to be able to, because when you're working on these things by yourself, it's so easy to let the timelines kind of slip on you. When you start doing it more in an organized fashion, there's other people waiting on the material, and that helps for me to make sure I'm getting the stuff done. So, so we have the episode written and recorded usually about 7 weeks before it airs, and that gives folks time to produce graphics if they've got an interest. And they're all volunteers, so sometimes they will have an episode where there's a lot of new graphics, and other times not so much any because nothing interests them per se. So. And of course, then we rely on stock footage a lot too. Lots of stock footage.
Yeah. So, do you feel like, I find that as I'm creating content, one of the things as well, one of the advantages that I think we get over traditional media is that we get to have a conversation with the viewers. I mean, they're literally chatting about what we're talking about right now. And don't worry, I see that a bunch of you have a bunch of questions, and we will totally get into it. But this is my time right now. I've got a bunch of questions I want to ask Isaac first. But there is this conversation, and you can feel the memes, and you can feel the pieces of knowledge that you go back and forth, that there is this shared understanding of the space, pardon the pun, that you're working in as you're moving forward, and it allows you to have an evolving conversation about the topics that you're investigating that maybe wouldn't have been appropriate back in the very beginning if you were just getting started. But now you've brought your audience along to a place where you can have all these short codes and
inside jokes.
You know what I mean? To be an in jokes and all of that.
You develop a community, and that's another one of the cool things. I know, obviously, if you're an actor getting millions of fan letters or something like that, it's got to be overwhelming, and it can get overwhelming. The correspondence we get at all sizes, but you get to know people, and that's and not just for feedback too. It keeps you going. You develop relationships with folks, just in the regular old audience, and it is ideal. I think as we see this kind of niche broaden out, just because there will be people coming out and producing more and more of this stuff, I think that we're going to see a secondary kind of thing where it is a lot more like. Audiences get to a certain size, and some shows get bigger, but for the most part, where you can actually talk to your audience individually, and then people probably tend to migrate to smaller channels over time because they can still actually have a conversation. Never too small so that you can actually start a community, but a good healthy medium, and we get to see how this new, it's like being silent film maybe is what we're going to be, but we're replaced by normal movies. But
right,
it is like being there at the dawn of radio or the dawn of film. And this is a new niche. This is like Wikipedia 20 years ago. Now it's awesome.
It's funny too, because like I always imagine, I think a lot of us, when we get into this, we imagine that we're going to, or people imagine that they're going to get picked up, that in fact, yes, Fox or Paramount or Discovery Channel is going to come along and choose you, right? And have you make a TV show for them on the TVs. But I really feel like we've found our destination,
Mhm.
that this is the best place that we can be. And I don't know, I've thought about this before. People have always said, like, if you got offered to do something for Discovery Channel or for BBC or whatever, I don't know whether I would want to do that compared to the community that we're building, the conversation I get to have, and
Would
the
be hard to
freedom,
say
right?
no, but at the same time, I had to say, well, what if you get picked up by Netflix or Discovery and say, I've never inquired on that.
Yeah,
No one's ever inquired towards me. If they asked, I'd certainly consider it,
yeah,
and it would certainly be an honor. But at the same time, it's not really something keep my fingers crossed that that's going to happen. I
yeah,
like what I do right now,
yeah,
and this is the most fun I've had in my entire life.
yeah,
This is just so much fun.
yeah.
Things
So
change. Who knows? 5 years down the road, 2 years down the road, tomorrow, things come by, things evolve. And But I'd be quite happy doing this for many years to come.
yeah, yeah. I think that's it. And I think we're completely off the radar. And I
Mhm.
haven't seen a lot of like YouTube type stuff
Mhm.
that's successfully made the transition over to big television or whatever. Um,
I
so
can
I think
certainly
we'll
jump
see.
niches. I mean,
Yeah.
I was in grad school when University came out. Because that's when I started. Actually, it might have been before that, but I started reading it way back in grad school. And that'd be like 2002 or one. And that was different time for the medium at the time. So, and that was so awesome. You could actually see good visual, like magazine quality,
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And it's evolved a lot since then.
All right. Thanks everybody for letting me chat with some of the inside baseball here with Isaac. This is the kind of stuff I just want to know, like where they're at along that. Hit us with any questions. A couple of people put in the little question mark icon if you want me to notice easier. But all questions coming. Someone asked a little ways back about the phosphate problem. Are you familiar with this?
Shortage of phosphates for life coming into existence, or
Maybe. I don't know. Let me see. You have to specify. Oh, that's right. Larry Beckham is asking, how are we going to solve the phosphate problem in the long term? Can you be?
like a shortage of phosphates?
Yeah, I don't know. Can you be more specific, Larry? um,
That's probably the only one I'm really qualified to address at
yeah,
all anyway. It's
yeah. All right. So Greg Ewing is saying, so I'm starting to work on my own YouTube channel, kind of like SFIA.
Mhm.
Do you want to know more? Any advice on starting out? Yay, team of one here, at least in the start. Any advice for someone who is starting down this path?
um make things you enjoy making, rather than trying to make stuff that the audience likes. It's be yourself. Obviously, you put on a bit of a more professional persona while you're working, but do stuff that you enjoy making, and the audience will follow. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. At least you're going to be enjoying it when you do it. In terms of the technical specifics, ping me afterwards. I'm always glad to help out new
Yeah.
channels get started.
Yeah, me too. And I mean, I think my advice is just to show up every day. Like, and Isaac is the demonstrator of that. He's better at this than I am, which is just follow your schedule, just keep showing up, just keep creating content. And I love that, right? Follow your curiosity. I found that my content has gotten better as I'm just following the topics that I'm most interested in than necessarily doing the stuff that I think people want to know about.
Although I guess I'll put a caveat on that we sometimes will run polls to see what kind of topics we'll do, and of course those tend to do well with views too, so I can't complain. But sometimes those are actually some of the funnest ones to end up doing too, just because it's kind of out of left field, and the audience is going to like it because they picked it, so you feel safe just kind of exploring it. So, but focus, especially early on, stick to stuff that you feel really comfortable doing.
All right, here's a good one. TRKM Strwiggy do you think the discovery of aliens will disprove the theory of a god?
Can't imagine why they'd be related, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's if we discover alien life on another planet, and the question is it complex life or is it simple life? And I think, I'm guessing most folks know that I'm not really optimistic about finding intelligent life in this galaxy, at least technological. When maybe the universe is full of cavemen. But I don't really see how it would have any real bearing on theological questions. Those mostly stand separately.
Yeah, I think people are going to use it as more evidence of whatever they believe in, and other people are going to use it as less evidence in what they believe in. And some people don't, as we see, don't require evidence to believe
Mm-hmm.
in things. Capital H is saying, I've heard Isaac mention the bathwater epoch in the past. I've looked at this topic for no avail. Love to hear your elevator pitch. What is the bathwater
I'm trying to
epoch?
remember what the actual water was called. You remember it was a paper came out a few years back about the possibility of life about 15 million years in, where the temperature was about.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I started calling that the bathwater epoch, and I thought some other people were calling that too, but I think I might have accidentally coined
Right.
it.
So this is a paper that was done by Avi Loeb and team, and Avi, of course, has come under quite a lot of scrutiny recently as being the big Oumuamua booster, but also, a really renowned astrophysicist, someone who was helping the Event Horizon Telescope do their calculations for what they're going to see when they take that image of the supermassive black hole. 2019, Navy Scott and Flower, spring. And so this is the idea that in the early universe, 7 to 15 million years after, the entire universe was the
Bathwater
room temperature
filtration.
was habitable. The entire universe was a habitable zone.
Did he have a name for that? Do you recall him using, or
He,
because
I,
I
I
feel like
think
I ought to be using
he
his term rather than
called
having just
the
excellent point one.
like the habitable epoch or the I don't. Yeah, yeah. It's just the cosmic microwave background radiation was room temperature.
Yeah. And I mean, there really would not have been going to what somebody was saying about the phosphates thing, assuming they were talking about in terms of available phosphorus. There wouldn't have been much to work with back then, but there was at least a little bit, and stuff was a lot denser. So I wouldn't rule out really simplistic life having potentially evolved in, but are not very good odds. But it's actually one of the things we're talking about in next week's episode, Panspermia, just because I thought it would be fun to take a look at it then.
You're doing
So
panspermia next.
next week, yeah. This week's one is actually we're teasing our Australian cousins for their upcoming Independence Day by doing one on space prison colonies.
Space prison colonies.
Sometimes it's fun just to do one that's not too well. I mean, we're covering in a serious fashion. You always have the possibility when you're doing colonization in space that once it gets going, you have a lot of more rogue elements that are basically going to leave, right? And there's certainly plenty of history of us doing that. Exiles and prisoners and things like that do colonization with. So I thought we'd take a serious look at it and then kind of look at what crime and punishment might look like in the future
Right.
too.
Um,
Mostly he's Australian kindred though.
Dan Bogats is asking, how long would it reasonably take for us to rebuild from a coronal mass ejection like the Carrington event? How ready are we for a severe coronal mass ejection?
It depends on how severe we're talking about. I mean,
Carrington event severe, one that lights the telegraph towers on fire.
yeah. I mean, the one that was the one in the 1800s, was it not? That was giving the ghost signals.
That no, the, so right. It was in the 1800s that Carrington saw a flare on the sun, and then there was a coronal mass ejection that was so severe, a flare that was so severe that electricity was pushed
Yeah,
through
going through the
the
telegraphs.
telegraph towers, caught on fire. People saw auroras around the whole Earth down to the equator, and it was a very significant event. And of course, the problem is that all of our computers are all connected together, and all of our electricity grids. And so you stick too much electricity down, you start to fry chunks of the.
Yeah. I'd be very worried about the condition. I'm not sure how it is in Canada, but the U.S. power grid is so old.
Yeah.
I don't think it would actually handle any sort of high level CME or EMP for that matter very well. I think some of the cities would be a little bit safer because most of them have newer wiring, but I mean, it's not like it's going to destroy civilization. It's not at that level, but that could be enough to tip somebody into recession, for instance. On the other hand, you might get out of it by rebuilding the power grid afterwards, which would be expensive, but it's something I really wish people would consider funding sometime soon. You can make one that's fairly immune to EMP and CME type stuff.
Yeah.
And good.
Arjone is asking, what do you think will be the qualities of the first sport created off planet, either in space or on another world? Have you done future
It's an
sport?
episode we keep thinking about doing is space sports
Yeah.
and I always want to call it space ports. And we did an episode on space ports.
You haven't done space
And
sports.
I was thinking that you got on the moon, for instance. It was something we were talking about with the moon. You have to exercise when you're on some place like Moon or Mars. You have to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts.
Yep.
Um, so you kind of expect almost every base to get its own, own team of whatever the game was. And it changes. I'm not sure you'd actually end up using a lot of the same rules for something like basketball, for instance. You really can't play that properly in low gravity. You have to rearrange the field. Same for something like baseball. And some of those asteroids, you'd actually be over the escape velocity. But you would have to have those, and I think you have leagues that would do that. But you could have some that were very specific, like launching yourself outside of a rotating habitat from its own spin, trying to catch onto a neighbor after drifting for a couple hours, or just dropping right out of like off the side of an orbital ring into the ocean. You hit terminal velocity instead of re-entry speed, and just dive down there. And that's there would be some unique new sports I think that we would get out of that, not just the usual portrayal in science fiction, which is let's take a modern sport and put tinfoil on all the players.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but I think you would see modifications of the existing
Of
sports that
course,
we have
yeah,
here on Earth. But then you would see, like for example, on Titan, you could strap on a pair of wings and fly around.
yeah.
What?
Same for Venus. If you were very confident someone could come get you if you fell too far. This massive proof suit.
Where
Um,
would you, like, if you were like high up in the atmosphere, you could do that?
yeah, like one of the buoyant. So they talk about doing the buoyant colonies on Venus up around
Yeah.
where it's 1 atm pressure. You could fly around on that and just don't fall too much.
Yeah.
I think you might want to power pack on something like that, but again, you've got that sulfuric acid in the clouds too. But
Yeah.
that we do have things that can resist sulfuric acid in terms of goggles and suits, so that shouldn't be too big a deal.
Avi Scott and Flower, we saw your question. Do you think the U.S. will establish a Kármán line for nuclear propulsion away from Earth? Do you think space agencies and governments will use nuclear propulsion in our lifetime? So, do you think we will see nuclear propulsion in the near future?
I hope so, because it's one of those things. I mean, I would love for us to get fusion tomorrow or really cheap solar power or power satellites, but until somebody's willing to really invest in something like that, the easiest choice really is fission. And I certainly do not favor using that too much in launchcraft or anything in low orbit. Although I think it's safe enough for low orbit and limited usage. But in terms of planetary stuff or asteroid mining, especially if we can find some good fissile material sources out there to supplement that, you should in theory be able to create an entire nuclear economy that doesn't have to come near Earth if people really don't want to. But
Right.
to me, that seems like compromising towards stupidity. We have a fear of nuclear that's not unjustified at all, but is really overblown. And I understand everyone wants to keep the DOST treaty, don't have nukes in space either, but you can't not weaponize space because every spaceship's a weapon.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. That's a great point. The spaceship itself is a weapon. I mean, the International Space Station, if they wanted, they could drop it down on any location on Earth and cause a lot of damage. It would be a
Yeah.
very, very expensive way to cause damage.
Yes, I think we want about 100 billion on that one. It seems like you might want to just use a nuke in a case like that. But
Yeah.
you know, I mean, of course, it's not really ideal for reentry though. But you can make something that can handle that reentry real easy. I mean, one of the reasons why we have so much that is we try to use it for braking. Someone decides they want to take an atomic rocket and fly it up as a kinetic weapon up to 20 kilometers a second, ramming into the planet. That's, I mean, it's not like it's going to end
Right.
the world, but that's a powerful weapon.
So do you think, like, I mean, we've got like the Outer Space Treaty, and really every second clause in the Outer Space Treaty is like no nukes in space. Seriously, no nukes in space.
Treaties have to be updated from time to time, and
Yeah.
and it was built with that in mind. The folks who wrote that weren't stupid. They've been through the treaty messes of the 16, 17, 1800s already. They know that you have to leave yourself room, and so it's a placeholder until we knew what was going on. There was no real need to have nuclear in space until relatively recently. If someone had been looking to set up a base, they say the US or Russia or China had gotten themselves ready to go do a moon base, they could have gotten permission for an atomic reactor there by just agreeing to let the other guys have a pod on board next to, as a piece of the base themselves. It's diplomacy. You
Yeah.
just if when the time comes, it won't be a big holdup. But the exception to that is privatization of space. A lot harder for somebody like SpaceX to say, "Well, we'd like to put a nuclear reactor in space." They have a bit more of a threshold in terms of trying to actually get that permission. So,
Right. Cody's Lab has joined us. He says,
hey,
unfortunately, I
Cody.
don't think there are good deposits of uranium in space. Mars, maybe. I, are there deposits of uranium that are
Mm,
accessible?
I think there's some with Crete materials. They was it potassium? Oh, I can't remember what the rest of it is. The Crete materials that we sometimes find in among some of the craters apparently have uranium near them a lot of times. But certainly there'd be a good amount of thorium if we ever get thorium cycles going. But
Right.
there should be a decent amount of uranium, but not a lot of it. Cody's right about that. I mean, but again, there's tons of it on Earth, and there's a decent amount of it in space just to set up a refining system for it. But I think you would almost have to start using burrito reactors because I think you want to be using something like plutonium ideally, or one of the more decently fissile ones. And burrito reactors also have a strangely bad reputation. I don't know why.
Right. Well, I mean, all nuclear reactors have a bad reputation. And I think you're exactly right. Like, if you want to get away from the bad reputation, just take it to space. And I really feel like that's the strategy for a lot of this stuff, right? Like, there's a lot of really bad polluting things that we do, and space is gigantic and it's empty and there's nobody out there, so who cares? Like, let's just
It's
mess
a
up.
radiation. It's the thing is, it's not empty. Everything that's in it that isn't empty is radioactive wasteland.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
hard to make the
yeah.
point.
It is like all radioactive waste. In fact, if you took a fission drive and fired it in space, you would be making a little part that was less radioactive. It's the worst.
We picture things like Mad Max, like, well, here's the Earth. It was a radiation scorched cradled hellhole. And it's like, well, that actually describes every place other than Earth.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I
It
mean,
was
there is just
everywhere.
this constant rain of cosmic galactic radiation coming down, and the constant solar wind. Yeah, it's all radioactive. So don't worry about it. You can't make it worse. You can't make space worse. It's
Yeah,
already
well, now
just
see,
terrible.
let's knock on wood because I'm sure someone will think of a way
I don't think a way to make it worse.
let's spray goo this thing. Have
Right. Let's just
radioactive nanobots everywhere.
right. Yeah. Okay.
I never like to underestimate our ingenuity, including our ways of holding ourselves. So
Right, to make things worse.
we're very talented at that.
um. All right. Let's see. We got a super chat here. Thank you for the super chat, David S. But I would just like, I hope people don't use the super chat as a way to get their questions to the top of the list, because I want to try and answer as many people's questions as possible. So, do you think that launch loops or a mini version and a skyhook are feasible in the 10-year time range, or still far off? So, what do you think? Launch loops. How big a fan are you of launch loops?
Until SpaceX started getting really good with reusable rockets, I had pretty much taken as given that things like the Lofstrom launch loop or the Startram was the only realistic way to go for kind of heavy lifting. 10 years, no, not because it's really all that technologically difficult. It's that there's so much prototyping you have to do along. I mean, you were talking about building something thousands of kilometers long. You don't build the highway system that quickly, even though you could, just because you have got all that developmental prototyping. You'd start off with something maybe 10 kilometers long that did like a 30G launch of dead payloads, nothing, acceleration sensitive. Um, I'm very optimistic about launch loops or Startram type things, but I'm less optimistic than I used to be about skyhooks, rotovators, because there's that little bit of extra difficulty there. And I'm worried that that's not really going to be panning out with the reusable rockets coming across as much more feasible. Skyhooks, though, still strike me as amazingly good combinations, especially you can do the electrodynamic tethering to get them regenerating momentum.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we could, I like the idea of hybrid systems where you're taking advantage of two platforms, and if you've got a skyhook that's grabbing a hypersonic plane or a launch loop that's shorter that can go up to one, I like that option. I'd say feasible, but not. We could get one started whenever people want to. It's just seems like updating our power grid. It takes a long time. And you
Yeah.
keep your fingers crossed somebody comes up with something better.
Arjone is asking, what do you think about the feasibility of the Dragonfly project that Fraser was talking about? So, did you look into the Dragonfly project when it came out, when the original paper came out?
It's really familiar sounding, but I'm
It's a
not.
well, it's originally it's a Robert Forward
Okay, I was thinking
idea,
Gigan's egg.
and it
Okay.
was a laser powered probe sent to another star, and then it was adapted for the Breakthrough Starshot mission. But the gist of it is that you use here's the dirty secret: is we don't have time to watch each other's videos. Just so you
Yeah.
know, um,
Well, you
right?
catch some. You
That's
catch.
why. That's why we're less familiar with each other's videos than probably you are. And also, you don't want to have the other person's
Well, that
videos
actually, it's one of
inflict your
those things
brain.
that comes up. Sometimes people send you a book and say, "Could you review this?" Say, "I don't want to," because if I do, I'm going to like a year from now without even thinking about use some of your
Yeah, I'm going to
material,
steal your ideas.
and I don't
Yeah,
want to do that where it's kind of going in the back of my head, and I'll forget to even credit you. You kind of like to keep a minimum on that. You watch a lot of the other channels, get an idea what they do, but you don't want to watch them too
yeah,
consistent. Because like when I watch one of your videos or one of John's, first thing I want to do is do a video on that. And I was like, oh, I should do one on fast radio pulse signals.
yeah.
And it's like, no, that's covered. Go ahead to a topic. Yeah.
Your audio is cutting in and out, and I don't know
Those
whether it's like some piece of technology on your end or whether it's just that you're going back and forth away from your
probably be
microphone.
leaning back a lot like this. So I have
Yeah,
really bad mic control. How is it right now?
it feels like there's some kind of technology as well that's cutting. So I don't know. Apologize. Tap the microphone that you think you're using. Yeah, that's the one. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
It'd be embarrassing was the webcam one. Um, I'm not even seeing it line up at the second on my. Can you hear me at the moment?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, actually, that was yours that was lighting up on. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just in general, laser propulsion. And it got me thinking about the Dragon's Egg novel by Robert Ford, but I always think of it for the neutron star civilization that lives there, which is coming up in an episode in March I just got done writing. I love using laser propulsion, especially for starships. The question is how you slow them down at the other end, and
So
can you
the
get
so the
doing that?
the trick with the dragonfly is it uses a mag sail as proposed by Robert Zubrin. So it deploys a 35,000 meter long loop that then interacts with the interstellar medium to slow the spacecraft down. So pretty much it launches, coasts for 80 years, deploys the mag sail, and then slows down to the
Now,
point that
what I like to use that in combination with is a forward probe that was doing a flyby, the Vanguard that slowed down and then was full of nice little automated machinery that would build something like a laser to slow you down
yeah,
too. But I really do tend to feel like laser propulsion is going to beat out things like fusion drives or stuff like that. It's always nice to have those options to get them, but we could do
yeah.
lasers, we could do power. We got an entire sun,
Um,
and it's got its advantages.
Benjamin Alexander really, really, really wants to know what you think about crop circles.
I thought they had thoroughly debunked those this
Yeah,
day. I
yeah. In fact,
mean,
the people who did crop circles,
I thought they claimed that one. Yeah,
yeah,
maybe
showed
there's
people how they did them.
the
And
conspiracy now says that they're lying.
oh
Perhaps
yeah,
what?
okay,
I know there was the one that they had in the 1980s was a crop circle, but I guess we played some joke. The U.S. Force had played some joke on the British SAS, and they paid them back by doing alien abduction that was staged. And they came out and admitted to doing that, and folks are now saying that that was in fact they were lying about that. There was actually a secret skull operation. I have no idea. It's crop circles, to the best of my knowledge, are not considered a likely thing these days. But
yeah,
who knows? I can't think of any. The biggest thing is I can't think of any reason why aliens would do that.
yeah,
It's so easy for me to imagine why they come visit us. That's the easy part. Why wouldn't you come visit a
yeah.
civilization? That's one of the reasons why I don't think they exist is because I can't imagine them not coming by to visit us if they did. But I don't really see why they do that to make crop circles. It
Yeah, exactly.
seems, yeah,
So, all of that, right? Like
yeah.
the fact that people can push, that it takes aliens to push over corn
Mhm.
does not sound like a real leap of dramatic technology for a race that can cross the vast gulfs between stars, and they can do all that, and then they are the
I
best way they
believe they
can
could
show.
make crop circles if they wanted to.
Yeah,
I do fully believe
yeah,
that.
yeah. They
That's
could burn holes into the planet with their mega lasers,
yeah.
and that would be evidence where they could just land and go, "We're here," as opposed
And
to knocking over corn.
you don't always have to have evidence to prove something is plausible, but it's a you have to have when you don't have good evidence for something, it has to be logically consistent. You have to poke at it and say, well, if they're doing this, why are they doing it? And if that's the motivation for doing it, why aren't they? Like they would say, if you're gathering DNA from people, you're abducting them to gather DNA. Okay, why didn't you just steal a bag full of pennies from the bank instead? Those things are covered in DNA. Why don't you steal a mailbox?
Yeah,
Why, or raid a blood bank? Why,
yeah.
why would you abduct people to get their DNA? So
So I've got a question for you. What is a near technology, something that's going to happen in probably the next 10 to 20 years, you figure, that will make the biggest difference on humanity?
two good options. One would be really better batteries, ones that can charge and recharge, and hopefully have a density on par with chemicals. If we could get that, that would be a huge impact. The other one, software-wise, reactive software, that like teaching, for instance, something that could, you got a computer desk with a student, and the student's reading or watching a video on something, and the computer says this person's showing biometric signs that they are bored. I'm going to switch to a different piece of material, or they showed an interest in this bit here, and so it shifts over. So they're watching a video on the Mongols invading, and the kids ignoring the main speaker, but they keep focusing on that one dude over there with the furry hat. So suddenly it shifts and starts having that guy talk about stuff instead. That kind of reactive software, because we don't think about it, but learning technologies are the most potent aspect of technological boosts in general. So things that could actually allow us to do that one-on-one teaching aspect where it's not just one person talking to someone, it's that you can react to them, that you can tailor everything that's going on to them. So reactive software like that would be the best one, I think, especially for so many, because you have so many new gadgets these days, we all just have to constantly learn. So
So it's like one of those technologies that will be used in almost anything to make that technology um, useful and more helpful.
seamless fast forwarding of well, let's say one of our videos, somebody's heard me talk about something before and we have to repeat it for the main audience. They start getting a little bit bored, like they've heard that, it just skips forward over past that without having to say another word,
Yeah.
and then they can tell, oh, it likes this, they like this bit. And the other thing, of course, is that it's not just that it can do that, it's that it knows how to do that. So that means that it can be used that for all sorts of stuff, like marketing. It can instantly say,
Yes.
"This is the toothbrush that you want," and I know you want a toothbrush right now.
Yeah.
I've been able to tell because you've been like picking at your teeth.
Yeah. So,
Um,
I mean, to the battery issue, do you think that this is possible? Like, do you think that there will be a dramatic improvement in batteries to the point that it can do some of the things that we need, or do you think there is just like the laws of physics require a certain level of energy density, and then that's that?
There was I have to be careful what I say. There was a venture capital fund that I was talking to that was starting to put some research funds into batteries, and they feel like they can actually boost that area of improvement very significantly. I'll leave it vague on that. I don't know if that we're talking about like magic batteries out of tomorrow or anything like that though. But they felt it was a very good area to be investing in at that time, and I tend to agree. It's certainly a good one to gamble on. There are limits though. I don't think you're going to get batteries that can store energy more compact than say hydrogen or gasoline.
Yeah.
um,
Or
and
antimatter.
I mean, it'd be nice if they, well, antimatter, Google for its black hole. I don't think we're going to get those. It'd be nice to have something like that. But if we get something that was just, on par with like chemical propellants, fats or carbohydrate levels or energy densities, and that you could charge or discharge very quickly, because that's the other big one. You go take your electric car out and say, well, okay, it's 200 miles. And now I have to sit at this gas station for the next hour or two to recharge. And that's the biggest problem we're having with this stuff. There are ways around that, though. Wireless beaming of power. Instead of having electric cars that charge up, you have ones that are receiving power through a rectangle on the highway. Although I have concerns that people would be okay with microwaves being beamed down the highway.
Yeah. Well, I finally made the jump and got an electric car. While all of our other YouTube friends are getting Teslas, I got a used Leaf. It's like 5 years old, but it's great. I love it. It doesn't go very far. It only goes about 100 kilometers. So, but I've never gone below. I think the most I went down was like 30%. And but I use it day in day out, and I bring it home and I plug it into the house, and it costs me like $2 to refill the. So I think we're there.
They're good for and I mean I live out in the middle of nowhere where you have to drive like 5-10 minutes to get to the store, but so they won't be too popular here where everyone wants to drive an SUV because of the weather anyway. But if you're like a two-car household, an electric car, and you got somebody who commutes on a daily basis, an electric car is perfect. If you live near a nuclear power plant, if you live next to a coal power plant, I'm not really seeing the
Right,
advantage.
of course. Here it's
I
all
do. So,
it's all hydroelectric where I am from, right? Because it just rains and it rains and it rains, and we just
yeah,
use that for our
and we
cars.
have a power plant right down the road from me, the Cloud Factory. And they never turned on the second reactor because it was never popular with people. It cannibalized for spare parts for years, and we have much cheaper power right here.
Yeah.
And we actually, and it would say, what was in the dangers? Like, well, we've actually got the worst safety record of any power plant, nuclear power plant in the United States, and I've never seen a three-headed fish yet.
Right. So Stephen Thomas asks, have you ever considered making shorter or more focused content for the ADHD afflicted among us? I love your content. It's far from boring, but it takes me 3 hours to watch an episode.
I don't know. I maybe 3 hour episodes. The record was like an hour.
Well, it's possible that the material is so dense that it takes you 3 hours to like go back and keep going on. Yeah.
I mean, every time I discuss, we occasionally do shorter bonus episodes, especially now that we're so locked into the schedule where it's months out. Sometimes the whim takes you on to do a current event, and we did like one for Asimov's 2019 prediction.
Yeah,
That was
I thought
fun.
you
And
guys
we
do that.
literally did that because one of the editors who helps me on that was, he was in hospital covering for minor surgery. He's like, I'm bored, and it's like, right, what are you? Are you doing anything? He's like, I'm also bored. It's like, what are you? Let's write an episode. Just get done. And so it is nice to be able to just do stuff spontaneously, which the normal schedule doesn't permit. But at the same time, there are a lot of really good science channels that do like 5 to 10, 15
Yeah.
minute videos. I do my niche, and I don't mind doing the occasional one other than that, but I know what I tend to be good at, and I don't mind playing with other ideas. But, I mean, if you want a 10, 15-minute video on astronomy, PBS Space Time, they do amazing
Yeah.
stuff. There's so many channels that do really good short videos. I don't see a reason to really move to that format myself.
Yeah, I mean, mine are in the 10 to 15 minute range, so I don't think I could go down to 5 minutes. I mean, it's for me, and people are like, oh, it just, why do you never get to the point? And partly is because I want to tell a bit of a story before I get to what I think is the interesting news. I want to bring the people up to speed with where we are, what is the state of the technology, and I want to and then push forward and surprise them with new things. And that's not going to be for everybody, right? So you're exactly right. Some people are going to want something that's shorter. SciShow Space, their videos are like 3 to 5 minutes. They're great. So
1 minute physics, they real fast.
1 minute.
Yeah. And I think most of them do run over that, but
Yeah.
and those are good solid videos. And
Yeah.
say, well, what audience are they for? And say, well, if they're for the general audience of people just want to learn something real quick, that's fine. If they want more details, they come on to one of our channels where we go into more detail.
Yeah.
If not, then they're satisfied. Some are curious about more, and they look us up.
Yep.
And it's just it's a preference. And that, always think about those guys who do radio shows for 3 hours every day.
What Twitch streamers? Right? Like, look, the new thing is that people are on Twitch and they're streaming. And I know, a lot of it is like video games, but people will watch people on Twitch for 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like kind of a little everything for everybody.
Oh, yeah. And that's the whole key. The biggest problem when we were growing up, we had the 3 channels, right? And PBS or BBC episodes might come in, whatever it is. We had the big 3, and that was it. And every show had to be based on how many people was watching and how much it cost to produce it. We didn't get a lot of sci-fi, not because it was terribly unpopular, but because they had to pay the actors and the special effects. When they get just the same size audience from doing something, they only had to pay the actors.
Yeah.
Now we actually start seeing we're finally getting good science fiction shows again. all over the place, and
Yeah.
that's because of the widening network to be able. You don't have to make an hour long or a half hour long show anymore. It doesn't have to be 26 episodes a season. They can just put out this number of episodes. That's the story we want to tell. This episode's 50 minutes long. That one last week was 35. This one will be an hour, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That flexibility. There's no more padding, no more
Yeah.
pointless.
Yeah,
And
we don't
that's
have to
the
break for commercials.
yeah.
Apart from thanking our patrons.
Yeah. And we're always very grateful to the patrons. Although actually it's where I steal a lot of my production team from too. I always feel guilty about
The
that.
terrible irony, yeah.
Like, oh, you donate money to the cause and let me steal your free time now too.
Yeah. Greg GW asks if you were the head of an advanced alien species looking down at Earth, would you choose to intervene and uplift us? Why or why not?
Uplift us to where was the question?
Uplift us to join the Galactic Federation.
I mean, you got technological uplifting, biological uplifting, neurological uplifting. Technological is just give more technology. I've never seen a problem with technological uplifting because when you get around to it, we all say, well, if this advanced culture does this, every time a scientist creates something that most people do not understand, we technologically uplift our culture by doing that. It's the assumption that it's coming pat around with some kind of exterior influence. So, yeah, if I was staring down at us right now, I'd give us technology because, I mean, we say things like, oh, I'm very worried about what these guys are doing to their environment or the way they treat each other when they're worried about where they're going to get their next oil or their next meal. And say, if only I had advanced technology that would solve these problems.
Yeah.
I don't dare give it to them, though. Let's let them outgrow it on their own.
Right. The Prime Directive is pretty...
It makes a basic amount of sense, but...
Yeah. But I think I think the gist of it is like our default is to mess things up for our own selfish purposes. So to avoid that, let's make a rule that you can't mess with other people until they have achieved a certain level of capability.
Now, in the original series, it was more of a we don't involve ourselves with them unless it really is demonstrably for their own good, like an asteroid's coming towards their world. I think it wasn't until the next generation of Earth that they really started enforcing it, and that's when it became problematic. You're saying, we don't know what the consequence will be, so we must do nothing at all. We can't play God. And say, you don't have to play God, just play decent neighbor.
Yeah.
If there's a plague in Ireland, I don't feel like I'm interfering with their civilization by sending them some vaccines. It's, and of course, the thing with it is, I don't think a lot of civilizations were wrecked by new technology, though. They were wrecked by an external conquering force that was using that technology to basically push in on them.
Yeah.
So don't be a jerk would seem to be like the Prime Directive.
Is that the Prime Directive? Don't be a jerk?
That feels like the more practical one. And, you're talking about thousands of years. How do you keep someone from landing and giving somebody technology over thousands of years? They evolve into a technological civilization. And why do you need to either? I mean, would we really have been hurting people that badly in ancient Egypt if we'd given them refrigerators and penicillin? I mean, would that really
and oral hygiene?
Yeah.
Right? Like that's like that alone. You go to any time in the history of humanity and go, hey, check it out. If you brush your teeth, you don't have all that pain in your face.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's, you can think of quite a few rulers historically who actually went off the deep end from easily curable stuff that, when you dig up their bodies and find out what's going on. I think some of the Egyptian kings were probably a little bit more screwed up, though, from the massive inbreeding. But, you still have a lot of these folks that, it's so easy to make their civilization a lot more comfortable for them.
Yeah.
And he said, well, we don't want to tamper with their culture. I said, we don't have to tamper with their culture. We just give them some useful stuff.
Don't be a jerk.
Of course, the problem is once you're there, they would say things like, well, what's it like in the place that you're from? You say, well, we got this wonderful thing called democracy. I'm very fond of.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, we have this thing we like freedom of speech and so on. Yeah.
You mean the king's not allowed to kill you if you disagree with him?
Yeah, yeah.
Not.
Right.
Yes, we are strange folks.
A.V. Scott and Flower is asking you your opinion of positron dynamics and their antimatter propulsion experiments. Are you familiar with this at all? I'm not.
I'm familiar with the basic concept of using antimatter for a space drive, and I mean, we don't really have a good source for positrons, though, do we?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the reason I was kind of avoiding the question is because neither of us really know anything about this, about them. So apologies.
That happens sometimes.
Antimatter is the most efficient form of energy, the most energy dense storage system you can possibly have. The only problem is that it is explosive when it touches anything.
I don't really see a good way to. I mean, they always talk about seeing inside magnetic fields and say, well, what happened? You know, you're basically pushing on it constantly, keep it moving. Let's say I put that into a bullet, an antimatter bullet. Wow, that'd be a big bang with a magnetic containment field in it. Typical bullet under those 10,000 G's of acceleration coming out that barrel. I'm not sure you can make a magnetic field that's going to be enough to prevent that from slamming into it. Just one little bit. Now it's disruptive. You drop a canister of the stuff on the deck and it goes boom. Your ship goes to accelerate and you go boom. It's antimatter. Beat if you can make it, right? If you could do some kind of cheap transmutation.
Yeah, I mean, antimatter is not a form of energy. It is just it's a battery, right? It's a way of, you create antimatter using a particle accelerator at an enormous cost. And the benefit you get is you get a very dense energy source that you then have to contain in a magnetic field. And then you're able to use that to try and,
if you can get it stable and you can make it at better than 10 million to 1 ratio of energy. I mean, there are occasions where you might be willing to spend 10 million times as much energy, like so you can slow down a spaceship at the end of its tiny little pod. But by and large, we have to get way better at making the stuff and figuring out how to actually contain it reasonably safely before it has any use, even as a weapon. A weapon has to be fairly stable too. You know?
Yeah. There was a question here about using Dyson spheres. So, apology. Let me see if I can find it here. Okay, Links off says, I'm developing a game with Dyson swarms in it. Should I strive for realism, which looks dull, or should I try to express the feeling of scale, even though it will be grossly far from real? So, should they make a realistic Dyson sphere?
A realistic Dyson sphere looks like a hazy light bulb. Realism, when you're doing game design, you have to make sacrifices for realism. We were joking in the one that we had set up so you're looking from the commander's perspective when you're controlling your fleet, and that all the ships look really close together, not because they are, but because you're seeing it from the commander's perspective, and he's having it all changed around to look closer so he can actually control it too.
Right.
But I mean, a Dyson swarm, it's you can't visualize it in its entirety as anything other than blah. It's only when you zoom in close that would, and then it's just going to look like a big collection of localized space habitats that are still really far apart. You're not going to have them that close together. The individual space stations, that would be the interesting parts of that.
One of the things that's really interesting is that we have already started to build the Dyson sphere.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When you think about our spacecraft like Juno or the Solar Dynamic Observatory or the upcoming James Webb,
Dyson sphere.
right? They are orbiting the sun at roughly the Earth's orbit. I guess not Juno, but they're orbiting the sun at roughly the Earth's orbit. They are gathering power from the sun and they're putting it to work.
Mm-hmm. When you get around to, and this always gets people out, they say, oh, the Dyson thing, you could never build something that big. I said, we're not going to build it that big. This is like colonizing a continent, not making a big building. You are adding one piece at a time as need and occasion and desire demand. And you just collect. It's like asking why the people who landed on Plymouth Rock didn't build the Mount 90 or something like that. You build it as you need and as you expand.
Yeah.
But it's kind of an inevitable thing because why wouldn't you if you're growing? That's always a trick there. Of course, you can never be sure you're going to do this, but if your population is growing, you're going to end up doing it eventually.
Yeah. So we have already begun. The Dyson sphere is under construction now. So
and it's going to keep getting bigger. And there's never going to be a discrete moment where we say, oh, well, I mean, maybe when you're within like 10% of, you're using 10% of the sun's energy, you might say, well, now we're really a Dyson swarm. But no, you're just going to keep adding bits and pieces. And someday someone's going to notice that we actually have more cross-section given over to power collectors than Jupiter and Saturn combined have, or something like that. But, it's never going to be a discrete moment. You're just going to keep building as you want to. Unless someone tries to regulate it so everything doesn't slam into each other. Which will probably happen at some point.
Right. Yeah. Eric 2000, how often are live streams like this organized? I do them every Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So Last week I did it solo. Previous week I had John Michael Gaudier. Next week I've got Paul Matt Sutter. The week after that, Dean Regas is coming on, and then I've got a bunch of other guests lined up. Sometimes I do them solo, and sometimes I have a special guest. We're about 5 minutes away from the time. So you said that you've got Panspermia is coming up as next week?
Yeah. This week it's going to be the space prison colonies one, and then we're going to look at panspermia in terms of the Fermi paradox and try to separate out the proper panspermia theories from the ones that are more iffy, because it gets a bad reputation.
Panspermia gets a bad reputation, or
panspermia gets a bad reputation. I mean, there's been a lot of fringe stuff associated to it, and it's not a terribly strong theory either, but it is a respectable one. We're going to look at that as an option. So, and then kind of talk about how the directed kind of efforts you might get out of that, like, could life have come, if we had life on Mars, might it have come from Earth in the first place, that kind of thing. Which arguably is already the case with badly sterilized space probes, so I don't worry about that too much.
Yeah.
Did they ever find out if that happened or not? They sterilized them properly, the rovers they were landing?
Which rovers? Various spacecraft have been sterilized to different things, but no, there are definitely microbes on various rovers that have gone to Mars. So no, at this point, we actually just covered this in Astronomy Cast. So there's the idea of planetary protection, and there's no spacecraft that has been sent to what's called a Type 5 or Class 5 restriction, which is where you bring samples back home to Earth. Mm-hmm. And in fact, there hasn't even been, I think, the Class 4, which is that you have a spacecraft that is going to be interacting with potentially habitable spots on another planet, right? So if we had a drill that was going to Europa and digging down through the ice and trying to sample the water, then that would require a certain level of cleaning. So at this point, spacecraft that go to Mars, for example, they wipe them all down with alcohol and try to keep a very clean environment, but there's still going to be material on them. So it's a and of course the Soviets back in the 60s and 70s just crashed completely dirty spacecraft into Mars all over the place.
I doubt that it really will make a difference in the end. Yeah. But it's good practice, because you never can be sure.
Yeah.
And we certainly don't need the place having all sorts of bacteria on it that are going to confuse us later on. But I'm really not expecting us to accidentally wipe out Martian life with dirty probes. I mean, other than that, suppose I say we are going to crash a probe there. Keep in mind, there's like 10 kilograms of plutonium in that rover.
Yeah, yeah, that might affect life.
Well,
well, someone was saying, if you send a lander to Europa, just have your lander wait on the surface of Europa for a little while, and that will clean it, because the environment around Jupiter is deadly. All right, I got one last question I want to hit you with, and then I think we'll let you go. The creator of TNT asks, are there any particles in interstellar space that can be used as rocket fuel?
Oh, hydrogen. I mean, hydrogen's a great one for that. Methane's actually a decently common molecule in space, too. There's quite a few. I'm trying to remember if they actually found ethane, too, but methane, certainly. Oxygen's common enough, though, and usually not as free oxygen. Yeah, there's tons of it. It's just the problem is the speeds you're going at, chemical fuels are useless other than to slow you down. So
right. So if you can have some way to gather up the hydrogen, there's lots of it out there. You just have to figure out a way to pull it into your spaceship and use it to run your fusion drive. Two things that we don't know how to do yet.
You could do 1% of light speed with a fusion drive that was constantly fueling itself off the interstellar mediums, because it gives you a lot more energy than 1% will detract from you. But it's like the Bussard ramjet issue. You can't go too fast, or you get slowed down when you all getting out of it.
Right. Yeah, so you have to your coasting phase, you have to make a fairly small profile. You can't be having this gigantic scoop that's out there harvesting material, and because it's going to be acting also like a parachute at the same time.
Yeah, unless you're getting more energy out of it than but the speed you want to go at, even fusion's not going to help you coast along too well if you're dragging that much for that.
Yeah. All right. Well, so before we do let you go, if people want to get involved in your vibrant SFIA community, how can they get involved?
Well, you can pop over to the actual YouTube channel, which I think is probably going to get linked somewhere.
Yep.
But or you can come join us on Facebook at Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur. And um, again, it's I think we've pretty much a very shared community, a lot of overlap. So you'll see a lot of familiar faces there. So.
Yeah. And I think I think that's the great part, right? Which is that in the olden days, if you were doing 3D graphics or doing illustrations, or you wanted to get involved in scripts or editing or all those kinds of things, there is an army now, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, of people who are happy to help put you to work and give you practice and experience, things you can put on your portfolio, and be able to say, "Hey, I did this," and as the channel grows, I'm sure the need for help is going to increase as well. So I think it's a great place for people who want to get involved in this kind of thing.
I can always use more help on things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and it
So, very
increases the
welcome.
production quality, and I think it's going to really create this very virtuous cycle over time. So always a pleasure, Isaac. And of course, I will put all the links. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Fraser.
All right, and thanks everyone for watching. Thanks to the mods for keeping us safe. And like I said, next week we've got Paul Sutter. All right, we'll see you all next week, everyone. Thanks.